Hey, and welcome back to the Wreckless podcast. This is Chef Cody Storts coming at you live from Wreckless in downtown Fullerton. We are joining always live at the lounge. Good old Travis Tidwell is here with us with Glenmorangie, and I'm probably still saying it wrong. That's all right. And then he has been telling us all about the wonderful things that not only has he done, but that the booze itself does. And now we are ready to get some drink. Travis, now what's up, dude? You just said some good things. I know that when Scotch comes up in a general conversation, if I just bring up Scotch, there's a few that come up. There's Glenmorangie, which always comes up. That's why I'm interested to see about it. The other one is, I believe it is, what's the Heavy Lafroig always comes up, which that's its whole nother...
that's a whole nother animal.
Yeah, it's like smoking your drink. And I'm sure we'll have a time when that comes to it. And there's a couple others that pop up. But I mean, this is probably the most wide, like you walk into any Scotch section, even the grocery store, and there it is. It's in your face. So you're going to walk us through. We chose two of those, and then also we're going to try the new Ardbeg just because I'm down to see what's up. But why? Like, what makes this the like foreshadow front? And let's drink it up, man.
Yeah. So what we have in our glass is Glenmorangie 10-year-old, or the original as we call it. But it is 10 years old. It's kind of our flagship whiskey. It's a whiskey that you can pretty much find anywhere. It's widely available. On a global scale, it's probably number 4. So it is quite a well-recognized brand.
Yeah, that's huge.
Yeah. And I think you see it a lot because it's so classic. It's so elegant. And it's one of those scotches that really doesn't turn too many people off because hopefully it's turning people on. And because what it is it's such an approachable whiskey. And that really comes down to the style of Glenmorangie.
So let's talk about this for a second. I mean, as soon as you open that bottle and started to pour some glasses, man, I mean, the room filled up with the aroma of like fruit, obviously alcohol, but that's what you want with something that's a little bit stronger. But I mean, I got like fig notes and like dried fruit right when you open the damn thing.
Yeah.
The whole room.
And that's classic to Glenmorangie. You know, there are a lot of distilleries that have that kind of fruitiness to it. I think Glenmorangie is one of those distilleries that's very prominent on that soft, fruity kind of style. And that's because of how we run the distillery, and it's also because of the shape and size of our stills.
I can't believe you explained it as soft and fruity. I like that, but that's a little weird, you know?
Yeah, but some of the whiskeys are big and meaty and oily and kind of robust and spicy, sometimes a little bit sulfurous. So it's just kind of one of the flavor profiles that we use to categorize it.
Right.
You know,
soft and fruity.
Yeah.
Scotch.
It's when you taste it, it's quite soft on the palate. It's very fruity on the nose. But yeah, let's go ahead and give it a sip.
Yeah, that is delicious, man.
Yes.
That's surprisingly smooth. The fire on the back is what I would expect out of a Scotch whiskey. I was always going to sit on your tongue for a lot longer. Am I right?
Yeah.
Bourbons, some of them made it to clean itself up is what I call it. You take a drink and then in 5 minutes it goes away. I think most Scotches tend to land hard and stay on for a long time, you know?
Yeah. You know, what I'm tasting is a lot of the complexities on the finish. You know, it really has that lingering kind of taste with a little bit of like citrus, but there's also some kind of like that spice and maybe some of the soft vanillas. And that's because of the casks that we're using. We're only using bourbon casks for this whiskey, or North American white oak. And that kind of lends and leads more of those stone fruit flavors, but also the kind of that soft vanilla, caramel, a little bit of that wood spice maybe.
Right, so they're using American barrels and for Scotch whiskey.
Yeah.
But over here we use French barrels for everything.
Sometimes.
Hold on. What the hell? Why on earth would we be shipping that stuff back and forth? There's got to be a tax issue with that, right?
You know, it was kind of...
Come on now.
For bourbon, they have to use all North American white oak.
Really?
Yeah.
Period.
It's by law, yeah. And that's actually one of the reasons why the Scotch whiskey industry uses so many bourbon casks, is because bourbon by law has to be a new charred oak every single time.
But the charred oak can be from anywhere. No French or no, it has to be American?
It has to be white oak, yeah.
White oak. Who made that freaking rule?
The Coopers.
So just some dude one day was like, I have an idea.
It was kind of smart.
You have to ship this wood over and then we'll be good to go. And that's what's up.
It was kind of smart. It was the Coopers Union. They did it to protect themselves. They always have a job now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess I could do that. Just make a rule and hope it ends.
Yeah.
I mean, that's good for them, dude. I mean, I like it. It tastes good, but that's interesting that they would make that sort of rule. Question about 10-year versus, and we're not going to, I mean, I'm assuming that your aging process with this, when you get to the 18, and we're going to skip the 18, but I know it's probably similar to this, but does the aging get smoother or does it increase flavor? I know with different boozes, it does different things.
Kind of both. So for the 18, which we're not tasting sadly, but we've got something even more special.
Perfect.
It does get a little bit smoother. It gets more refined, as I say, or a little bit more refined, but some of the complexities can get more in depth. because of longer time in oak.
And by complexities, you mean like stronger on the fig flavor, stronger on the smooth and sweet and fruity, right?
Yeah, and maybe even some more like subtle flavors that you can pick up by nosing and tasting. If you really sit with a whiskey and get really intimate with it for 20 minutes or whatever. I can't keep a glass that long.
Right. I had somebody the other day. They were talking about we have an ice rail in our bar, and I think the ice rail's awesome, dude. It's really cool, but I don't know what monkey leaves their beer long enough to get cold. You know what I mean, dude, or get warm? I don't know. It's just my opinion. I'm the same way with a glass. You give it to me, it's gone.
Yeah.
So let's move on, man. And I know this next one, we have it on our back bar now, and it's probably one of the unique and coolest, well, definitely scotches that we have for sure. And the way it's done, I almost say it's like my brunch scotch. And I'll let you explain a little bit more, but this thing is awesome.
Yeah. So the one that we're going to taste is called Glenmorangie Signet, which is one of our more exclusive offerings. Really, this kind of goes back to our whiskey creator, Dr. Bill Lumsden, who has his PhD in biochemistry. He wanted to create kind of his legacy in the whiskey industry, create something completely different, something that hadn't been done before. And when he was getting his PhD, he came up with a lot of inspiration and kind of ideas. And one of the major things and thoughts that came to his mind was kind of the roasting of coffee beans or espresso beans and how that can change the flavor of the product. So he basically took that technique, and we now caramelize our barley for Glenmorangie into what is called heavily roasted chocolate malt. And that is a majority of this whiskey being that chocolate malt. So what it does is kind of creates this whole new category of flavors. When we make this whiskey, we only do it for 1 week a year out at the distillery. And the new make spirit, or the new spirit that we're making, creates these unique kind of roasted coffee espresso-like characteristics in the actual whiskey. And then, of course, we age that for a longer period of time. We also take some very, very old whiskeys that we blend into this particular item. And then we take some whiskeys that are finished for 5 years in new American oak. And it really kind of creates all these different flavors in the casks. And then we take those cask types and blend them together. And that's really Dr. Bill and his team to create something truly unique called Glenmorangie Signet.
Yeah, that's rad, man. I mean, on the nose, I've definitely, right away, you can taste the difference between the dried fruit and the oak. You can honestly get I call it breakfast, but you're getting coffee, chocolate. It's almost like if I put this with like pancakes, I'd be golden. And not that it's sweet, but like that punch you can get with like having pancakes and butter and syrup, and then you drink this.
Yeah,
pretty good, man.
This is one of those. This is one of those scotches that you could drink all day long. It's got that breakfast style coffee espresso roast, but it also has some dessert-like qualities like dark chocolate. If you fancy a cigar, this is one of those fantastic whiskeys that pairs really, really well with a cigar. Or heck, even if you don't like something sweet, you can have this as your dessert because of those chocolate subtleties that you find in the whiskey.
Yeah, man, I'm down. So I'm curious. So you make this one time a year, you said, right?
We make it at the distillery 1 week out of the year.
1 week, but only one time.
For production, yeah. So the 51 other weeks at the distillery, or roughly 48 weeks because we close for maintenance and things like that. But every other week is dedicated to regular production. So the malted barley that we would use for the core Glenmorangie range, like Glenmorangie 10-year-old, our finished whiskeys, things like that, the 18-year-old. So this is a completely different barley that we distill, and it has to be kind of cleaned and sanitized every time we do it. So it is, yeah.
Right. So here's the deal. You make this one time a year, and then they're going to make it next year, right? Are the years going to be different, or are you trying to make this taste exactly the same? So like if we talk about this podcast right now, next year when they try this, is it going to be in the same production level? Are you trying to match years, or are you trying to like diversify the Signet to be, more coffee or more this? Is it a growing product or a stagnant product?
So it's part of our core range, but it's something that we do on such a limited scale. And Dr. Bill actually tries to keep all the products consistent. We know that each batch is a different batch based on our laser etched code, but Dr. Bill believes that a batch number, so to speak, is kind of like a cop-out. That's really showing that a master blender kind of isn't really doing its job, because he's leaving himself kind of this opportunity to say, oh, well, it's a different batch, instead of making it consistent.
Right. So I heard this. This is a new concept for me. When we did Louis Trey, we talked about how they're trying to make everything taste, out of these 100-year barrels, everything taste exactly the same every year. And to me, I'm used to dealing with wine. Like I said, booze is kind of a new, I've always drank it, but I'm learning so much from you guys. And with wine, if it rains more one year, that's how the wine tastes, right? You could still blend and get red blends and whatever, but you're never really making the exact same wine, no matter what. right? 2015 is not the same as 17, not the same as, as 19 is going to be.
The only time you see it in the wine world is really with Champagne, and that's because Champagne as a region has such inconsistent weather that it's very, very hard for them to produce a exceptional year, unless, of course, it is an exceptional year for the weather, the conditions for the grape growing season. Otherwise, most of your champagnes are non-vintages, and they're blends of different years to make a consistent flavor profile.
Yeah, that's wild, man. And I dig that. I think it takes, I kind of want that to be my next life, man. I'm going to come back and just drink like hundreds of barrels of booze and make them all taste the same. I'm down. Not that it's easy by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have to be a scientist and completely a booze dork to make that work, which I admire. However, dude, what a gig.
Yeah, lots of nosing and tasting.
Yeah, well, sounds like my last girlfriend. I'm just kidding. It's awesome, man. Well, this is probably one of the best, most well-rounded scotches I've ever had, man.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, I think that, and as far as on the unique scale, like I wouldn't drink this every day, even though I could. But man, that is one hell of a gig.
Yeah, we were really fortunate. For Signet, we took home the top award from the International Whiskey Competition
Damn straight
in 2016. Yeah, so it won everything. It was the best whiskey in the world according to the International Whiskey Competition. So it was pretty awesome for us and Dr. Bill, really, because this is his legacy. This is his whiskey, and that's really why you don't see too many whiskeys like this on the market, because it's very hard to replicate.
Yeah, I would think that once you figure out something like this, it takes years and years, and then once you do, you're like, nailed it. Yeah. Done, right?
So it's a labor of love, because he's had this idea for about 25 years, but he really only started producing it about 10, 12 years ago. Right.
And so you have to have enough blended scotches and whiskeys to be able to mess with, really, right?
Yeah.
You can't just, that's what's crazy about this business too, is everybody's like, oh, you just make this. You're like, no, that's been sitting for 30 years.
We use some very, very, very old whiskeys in this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm stoked, brother. And then what's the last one we got here? So we're gonna skip the boat. I'm gonna keep this glass though.
Sure.
And then so we'll pour the new ones in the new glasses over there. You can do whatever you like, but I'm gonna hold on to this one for to go with my coffee.
Absolutely.
And then we got Ardbeg next, right?
Yeah. So.
All right, talk to me about it, bud. There you go.
We have Ardbeg, which is kind of our sister distillery, if you will. So Dr. Bill oversees both facilities, and really Dr. Bill is the one that kind of highlighted and tried to put together this acquisition of this distillery that was really in ruins. So it was closed from 1981 to 1997, and we resurrected it in 1997.
You said it was mothballed. That just meant that like there was nothing, right?
Yeah, so mothballed means it was closed. Sadly, we were owned by another company that also owned a major producing distillery on Isla. And at the time, in the 80s, nobody was really drinking a whole lot of whiskey. It was kind of the birth of the new age cocktail, the cosmopolitans.
Right, everybody was vodka and ginning it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that was the big deal.
Yeah, so half of the distilleries in Scotland closed, and Ardbeg was one of them. So it sat dormant for 16 years. However, we did produce like once a week for a couple years in the early 90s, but that was just to fulfill the contracts that we had already in place with the major blending houses. So really, we were only making whiskey 1 week a year for like 3 years during those dark times on Isla.
Wow. So this has a whole different nose. Yeah. Opening this bottle is like you might as well just skip to another genre completely. So talk to me. So is this peated? Is this what am I smelling here?
This is what we would call a peated whiskey. It's a big misconception in the Scotch whiskey world that every distillery is every Scotch whiskey is a smoky whiskey, when really there's only a handful of distilleries that produce that distinct smoky, earthy, peaty, rich style. And mainly you're going to see that on the island distilleries. And that's because that's the resource they had available to them.
Right. So it's like saying an IPA, right? I mean, everybody's like, oh, IPA. They don't get the reason the hops were there was to preserve the hops wear off on the trip. That way you have the natural beer when you get there. We'll talk about that in another episode. But all these things were for preservation, really.
Correct.
And people just liked them because that's what their option was.
Yeah.
It's what I would call an acquired taste.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially on some of the islands, like Isla in specific, there are some trees, but there's not a whole lot of trees. And if you go back to the 1800s when they were making whiskey on the island, they would never physically burn wood. That was way too precious of a material. They would use it for houses, fences, boats, things of that. And they found that they could dig up the earth, dry it out, and use that as a fossil fuel. And of course, they were making whiskey at the time. So it was kind of an accident by necessity.
Yeah, I was about to say, this sounds like a good accident.
Yeah.
Really is what's up, right? I mean, these guys went, oh man, and the smoke went in and they drank and went, hey, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Right?
So,
that's it.
And that's why most of the island distilleries have that kind of smoky, peated characteristic. So during the drying process of the barley, we're actually smoking the barley. And that's what impacts that really rich, smoky, full-flavored kind of peatiness, if you will.
Wow, man, I just took the first drink of that, and it's all smoke on the nose, but I'll tell you right now that you get a little punch in the front. This is really, really smooth.
Yeah, there's some sweetness in there too. So this is Ardbeg Anno. It's the newest whiskey to the Ardbeg range in the last 10 years, give or take.
Right.
And it was designed and created by Dr. Bill and his team to really create something a little bit smoky, soft, round, but undeniably Ardbeg. So Anno, it kind of means the round, and it's named after the Mole of O, which is a round peninsula on the southern coast of Islay.
Tony, did you get some of that yet? Woo! Yeah, not too bad, right?
No,
I mean, compared to the first one, I mean, you get a nice little, the first one had a nice punch to it. Great.
Smooth. Yeah, I just kind of felt it in my chest. The
Yeah,
first one.
it was like a wake-up call, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The second one was like, hey, man, this is just smooth and good.
Here's flavor.
Yeah.
And this one's like, hey.
here's your smoke. Here's everything that the other two didn't have, man. That is delicious, dude. The cool thing is I'm not getting as much fruit and sweet and smooth out of this. It's more like I feel like it's the manly version of what we just had, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely a different taste. You know, I like to kind of compare whiskeys to the beer world. You know, everybody starts their journey at a certain level or a different place. You know, I was drinking some pretty terrible beers when I was younger, right? In those, you know.
I like how you didn't name any names.
Yeah. And then as my taste evolved, I started drinking better and different. And now I really like some of those, you know, IPAs.
Well, as, you know, in the middle ground, you start drinking beers that you don't mind throwing up.
Sure.
Right? That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah.
You know, and then as you grow up, you're like, well, I'm just not going to throw up, so I'll drink the good stuff. That's really what happens, right?
Yep. And then I think Scotch whiskey is the same kind of way, and wine for that matter. You know?
I agree, man. I drink some really fancy stuff, and I do it on purpose. And when I don't drink fancy stuff, I have another purpose. You got to potty it up, right? And that's okay. That's okay. None of these fit into that category, dude. And I've not really got into Ardbeg a whole lot, but that is a great introduction, man. And I will definitely be trying more of that. I'm not a huge peated fan just because I like to taste my taste buds. Just like I don't like huge IPAs because I feel like as soon as you eat after them, everything tastes like an IPA.
Sure.
But I'm a food guy.
Right.
As a culinary guy, I like to be able to taste what I eat. And if I'm just drinking, I like to overpower it. So it depends on my time and day.
Yeah, but I noticed the pig tattoo on your arm, and you did mention you were from Texas, so I got to imagine you like barbecue.
Dude, I don't just like barbecue. I lived it for a long, long time, dude.
So,
the sweat of pig fat down my face has been a real thing at many, many times in the middle of the desert, you know?
So one of the distinct flavor profiles for Ardbeg is like smoked bacon or smoked meat.
That's my cologne, bro.
Yeah, so
That's it, dude. If I had smoked pork cologne, I would wear it every day, dude.
you know, you could just dab a little bit of this bottle and put it on your neck there, and
Yeah, I'm sure the popo would really like that if I got pulled over, right? No, dude, I swear to God, it's cologne.
Yeah.
Leave me alone. It's cologne. Yeah, right. 2 o'clock in the morning. So, hey, thanks, man. I hope you had a good time.
it's been a true pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Thanks for taking your stop out of the day. I know you're a busy, busy man, and I know you got work to do and more of this wonderful booze to drink. But I look forward to having you on again. And if something comes around, we could try more stuff. Please come by and let me know, man.
Absolutely.